All right, well, hello and welcome to Symbiota Support Group, October 2023. I can't believe it's fall already. And we're going to talk today about loan management, but I don't think it's going to take that long. So this is a good session for if you have any questions about any other Symbiota related tasks, questions, whatever, then please feel free to ask. All the Symbiota support groups are open for discussion and questions at all times, but I think we're going to have some more time today to do that. So just a couple of announcements from the Symbiota support group. Symbiota is going to be at TADWIG 2023, or I should have said the Symbiota Support Hub will be there. So I'm going to be there, and Ed Gilbert is going to be there, barring any travel issues. So if you're going to be at TADWIG, which is the Biodiversity Information Standards Group conference next week, then come find us. We'll be there. There will be, I think, 2 presentations, one by me and one by Ed. So make sure to catch those. And if you're participating virtually, you'll be able to catch those recordings as well. This is an important announcement for folks who are part of the CERNEC TCN. And if you don't know what that means, then don't worry, this does not pertain to you. But the images that were previously hosted in Cyverse that we have been in the process of migrating over to Symbiota Support Hub servers, that process is about 74% complete. So we're still churning out the last couple of things, and you will receive an email, or the person who's listed as the contact information with your collection in the CERNEC portal will receive an email once that mapping process is complete, and we think we have all of your images moved over. So if you have any questions about that, I'm also happy to answer those at the end of this session. Then after that, we're going to be focusing on the Pteridophyte Consortium TCN. So that's with the Pterido portal. We're going to be moving images from Cyverse to a Symbiota Support Hub, as well as the New England vascular plants, now known as the Consortium of Northeastern Herbaria. That will be the next in the queue. And these are old projects that only kind of pertain to those particular portals. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, again, don't worry. How this may pertain to you, however, is just an announcement that the Symbiota Support Hub is offering image hosting for your web-ready images. So this means your JPEGs that are generally smaller than 10 megabytes, preferably closer to 5 megabytes. These are the JPEGs that you generally see in a Symbiota portal alongside your occurrence record that you can use to do transcription or that the public can use to view. So we are offering those services through our recharge center, which is a way that you can just contract with us for services. It's not necessarily it's not part of any NSF grant. So if you live manage your data in a Symbiota Support Hub hosted portal, then the first 25 gigs of image hosting is free. And so for context, that would be, if your images were about 5 megabytes a piece, then 25 gigabytes would give you like 5,000 free images. If it's a little more, then you get a few fewer images. But then beyond that, the current rate is about $1 per gig per year. And that's, again, we're trying to keep costs as low as possible, but image storage does cost because there's maintenance involved. And then that does also include the linking of your images to their specimen records, as long as they have been named according to their catalog number. So this subscription type service it applies to folks who aren't currently associated with a funded National Science Foundation project that has already put image hosting into their grant. So if you're part of like the global TCN, or some of the other TCNs out there that have already included Symbiota Support Hub support in your grant, then there's no cost here. All right, any questions about that before I move forward? Okay, are there any other announcements from the community? I'm gonna stop sharing my screen for just a moment. And Lindsay just put a really helpful link in the chat. That's a link to pretty much all of the things that you can contract with the Symbiota Support Hub to do if you need to make new developments, which is not covered by our current NSF funding. Then you could contract with us to do that. If you need to make a brand new portal, you can contract with us to do that. Granted, it's open source software, so you can go take it and do what you want. But if you want to host it on Symbiota Support Hub servers, then you can contract with us to do that. Okay, well, if there's no other announcements, then let's go ahead and jump into kind of the content sharing part of our session today. And today we're going to talk about loan management. There are some pretty slick tools in Symbiota portals that enable you to manage loans, and they have been growing and increasing in usefulness over the last couple of years. So I'm excited to share this with you. So I just wanted to give us quickly an overview of a reminder of what loans are in the biodiversity specimen community. So I come from an herbarium background, and loaning is very, very common in the herbarium community. And as I understand it, it's very common in all scientific collection communities as researchers and educators want to borrow pieces so that they can conduct research or use them for exhibitions and things. So in general, a loan is just borrowing a specimen or specimens for research, exhibition, or education. So generally, someone will make a loan request, and then the request will be evaluated. Maybe it will be approved. Maybe there will be some caveats or some paperwork put on top of it. And then they'll package up that loan and they'll get it sent out to whatever natural history collection is requesting that specimen or those specimens. Then there are a couple of ancillary topics, including gifts, which is giving and receiving specimens with no expectation of receiving anything in return. And usually this happens, at least in my experience, when a collection has a particular taxonomic or regional strength, and they have researchers in their institution that are, looking at particularly the legume family or something. And so a different institution gains a bunch of specimens that they're like, oh, this would be much better utilized at a different collection. And so they just ship them off to that collection, and that's a gift. And then exchanges is somewhat related, but there's actually kind of an expectation of reciprocation that the other collection that you're sending the specimens to is also going to send you some specimens that they think is related to your research agenda or your collection's research strengths. I think that there are often exchange agreements. I'm not an expert on this, but I think there's usually like okay, we'll send you specimens, you send us specimens, and then people will often maintain a balance just to know approximately where they stand. So I explain all this because it relates to the tools that are available in Symbiota portals and why they might be used or set up in the way that they are. So you can find the documentation for the loan management tools. I'll admit it probably needs a bit of sprucing up. So if you have any suggestions about things that you would like to know about in loan management that's not currently included in the documentation, please feel free to open an issue in our GitHub repository, and that will encourage us to look at that particular piece of the documentation a little more closely. But for the rest of the time, I really want to just jump into a portal and talk about the loan management tools. So I'm working in the Symbiota sandbox so that I'm not showing like actual to-date loan data. There might be some actual loan data, but it's probably old and out of date. So this is, if you are going to manage loans, you must be actually you can be an editor or an administrator for your collection to create loans and to manage loans. So if I go into my profile, occurrence management, and I'm actually not going to manage in either of these, but if you were going to manage your collection, then you would click on the name of the collection and it would bring up the data editor and administrator control panel. So ignore what I'm doing right now to get to my collection in a different way. But here I am on the same page. So let me zoom in a little bit. So the loan management tools are within this data editor control panel right here. I'll just click loan management. And you can see that there are 3 different tabs. There are ones for outgoing loans, incoming loans, and then gifts and exchanges are included in a single tab. So outgoing loans are loans that you are going to send of your specimens to some other institution. And then incoming loans are ones that are coming in from another institution to your location. And the nice thing about managing your data in a Symbiota portal with regard to loans is that if someone creates a loan and they live manage their data in that same Symbiota portal that you are in, you can actually take advantage of all the information that they have put into that loan and just say, oh yeah, that's an incoming loan from them. And you bring this into your own loan management. I believe, well, now I can't do that there. Well, I just have some slight examples here. I don't think that one's actually linked to a real one on the other side. But anyways, so to create a loan, you just click on this green plus sign. And then you have to select an institution from this drop-down list where your specimens are going to be going. And if that institution does not exist on the list, then you just click this green button here to add a new institution. So this is a big caution sign because it's very easy to create duplicate institutions on accident if you don't know the correct institution code, or if you don't use an institution code at all. Sometimes that happens. So just make sure to check the entire list before you actually enter a new institution. Sometimes institutions will have a different code for a different collection. So for example, in the herbarium community, the University of Nevada Reno collection, its herbarium acronym is Reno, but a lot of people know of it as University of Nevada Reno, or UNR. And so at one point, there was both UNR and Reno in that same list. So before you add an institution, make sure that you know the code that they are referring to, or that that collection is associated with, and that you don't create a duplicate institution. It is possible to merge them after the fact, but that's something that can only be done on the back end. So you select an institution. So let's just say I'm going to send it here. You can make up your own loan identifier, as long as it's not one that you've already created before or used before. And then there are a number of fields that you can fill out. You can fill out who it was processed by. You'll probably want to include a sent date. So let's say I'm going to send this on Wednesday. You can put a due date, which I've been told in the herbarium community is probably about 2 years afterwards. You can put information about the specific person, number of boxes, how you shipped it, et cetera, et cetera. So once you have the general data in here, and let's just save that, you can associate specimens in your collection with this loan. So you can do it in multiple different ways. So you can just have a list of catalog numbers and scan them in. So say you have the specimens like in your hands, or maybe they emailed them to you and they just had a list of the catalog numbers. You could copy and paste those in here. And then you could say process specimens, and it would add those specimens in. So just for an example, I'll go over to, let's just say they want both of these specimens. So I could say that, and then I just have to delimit by commas. Or it could be on a separate line. So that means that you could copy a like an Excel column and put that in there, and that would also be processed the same way. So I'm targeting catalog numbers. If I click process specimens, it's going to link these two specimen records to my loan. And then when I go back into my loan details, it's automatically updated my specimen total because that's how many that I've linked in. And you can sort them either by catalog number or other catalog numbers. Once they're returned, you can edit the return date here, but I'll go into that in a little bit. So this is the adding a list of catalog numbers. This is scanning a barcode. So this is going to, every time you enter something in here, it's going to automatically add it. So let's just add this one here too. And then if I hit enter, it just linked it already. And it won't show up quite yet. You might need to reload the page. But there's my third specimen right there. So that's how you link the specimens in the beginning. And say you sent that out, well, back up a moment. You've added all your specimens here, and let's say I want to export the specimen list because I want to print that out and I want to include it in the actual physical box. You can do that just by doing export full specimen list. And you can add a message here. You know, good luck with your research. You explain that this is 3 specimens of Eriogonum shockley for morphological research. I'm going to save that. And then what's really cool is that you can generate loan paperwork right here from the browser, or you can export it to a doc. So you can do an invoice, and this is going to explain this is a loan for study, and if you had a name entered in this requested for, it would show up here. There's a description. You can also print a specimen list, just like we did on the other page. There's multiple ways to do that. You can do a mailing label. So it's going to take the address that was associated with the institution that you selected in the very first step of this loan creation. And then it's going to put your address as a return address. So that's nice. No more mailing labels manually. And then this is an option for if you wanted to print an envelope. So if you're printing the invoice separately from the box, then you might want to print that directly onto an envelope, and that's what you can do with that option there. Okay, and then a new option is also that you can add attachments. And I believe this was developed by James Mickley, who is in the audience here. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you can add JPEGs or PDFs of your any other correspondence that might have happened outside of the Symbiota portal. So if I just add some random PDF here, you can save the attachment. And then later on, you can go and look at it, and it will just pop up right here in the browser. So that's really nice if you can scan in or add images if someone sent you some loan paperwork that was outside of Symbiota, but you kind of want to keep it all in one place, then you can put that right in there. You could, put a copy of an email in there, whatever helps you keep it all organized. So then when someone returns that loan back to you, there are some tools that enable you to make sure that all the specimens that you put into that loan come back and you can check them in. So you can check in the specimens pretty much in the same way that you could link the specimens in the beginning. You can put a big list of them. You could scan the barcodes, which can be particularly helpful because if you have your big box, you can do a one at a time check, see if any of them are missing. And then what I think is super handy is often when you send your specimens to someone, at least in the herbarium community, they will identify all of those specimens. So you'll have a bunch of new identifications. And often they will be the same taxon because, often you're sending, here's all my Eriogonum Shockley's, and they can re-identify them. And this links to the loan management tools link to the add new determinations. So you can, from your list, select which ones are going to gain a new identification. So you can say that, well, they found that these two specimens were actually something else. So I'll just choose some random other Eriogonum. Steve Jobs did this at some time in the past. It's a miracle. Add new determinations. And then those are going to be renamed in their actual specimen record. So if I go to the specimen record now, it has a new determination. And it looks like I did not check the make this the current determination, which you'd probably want to do. So that would mean that the determination that you are adding right now is going to usurp the old determination and be the new scientific name associated with that specimen. What you can also do from here is add those annotations to the print queue. If you're getting the specimens back and they have new annotations on them, obviously you wouldn't need to print them anew. But if someone instead sent you just a list saying that here's the ones that I identified, you can print out the identification labels yourself. I don't think that's very common, but if they did, you could print out those labels right there. You wouldn't have to go individually find all of those specimen records and then add them to the print queue, add the determinations, etc. So you can, select two of them, select one of them. Let's just do this one so I can show you how the make determination current works. So I'm making this determination current. I'm not going to add it to the print queue. And if I add the new determination, then it has changed the scientific name associated with the specimen and usurped the old data. The old data is still there. It's the old identification, but it is a past identification. All right, and then there are just a couple of other options you can do from here. If you click this top left checkbox, it's going to select all of the specimens in this list, and you can batch check in them all. If you have 10 and you're like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, we're good. Just check them all in. You can do that, batch check in. Or if you accidentally added specimens, or maybe they took some for destructive sampling with permission, hopefully, then you can just remove certain specimens too from that loan. It doesn't delete the specimens outright, it just removes them from the loan. Okay, and then to delete a loan, you can go into the admin tab. However, you do have to unlink all the specimens before you can delete a loan. So if you ended up not sending out this loan, you could just say, okay, batch form, remove all these specimens, admin, delete this loan. So that's outgoing loans. That's when you control those loans, but incoming loans, they look pretty much the same, at least in terms of the data that you can fill out, the metadata that you can fill out. And Ed, if you are listening, I think you're in the audience. Can you give us more information about how incoming loans can be linked from other collections, or can they?
Certainly. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so this system is really unique in the aspect of since these collections are managing data within a shared environment where multiple institutions are managing their data. What happens is when you create a new outgoing loan, and I'll get to the ingoing loan. If you create a new outgoing loan, let's say I'm from ASU, I create a new outgoing loan that's going up to the Diva herbarium up at NAU. I create that loan and I send it out, assuming that I selected an institution that is linked to the Diva herbarium collection. So if you go their profile, if that address is being displayed, that means that it's linked to the institution that you said you were going to link it to. There's some times when someone will create an institution, you'll create a new one, and it's not automatically linked to that other institution. They help to do that from their end. But once that's linked together, what happens is by you creating outgoing loan, it automatically will go into their incoming loan tab. So you create that outgoing loan, send it out, they get it in the mail, they could open up their loan management, click the incoming loan tab, and they'll already see the one that you created. Now they could only manage, or they could only edit the certain fields though, because you're the one that owns that form. However, one of the fields that they could modify is that the loan was received. And I think there's another field of condition or this and that, and they could do those edits. So that will automatically tag it as being received within your view too. So it's that loan is actually shared between the two institutions. However, let's say you are getting a loan in from, let's say still I'm from ASU Herbarium, and I'm getting a loan in from New York Botanical Garden. They don't manage your data within the system. I can still go in and actually create an incoming loan. And I create that incoming loan. Now I'm the ownership of that incoming loan. And I can modify all the fields and enter that information. So you could still manage incoming loans if it's not, if the other institution is not part of it. Does that make sense?
Awesome. Thanks, Ed. I have discovered 2 live collections in this sandbox that I can hopefully use to demonstrate. So this ASU does have a linked institution. It has an address linked, and so does the Diva Herbarium, the Northern Arizona University Herbarium. So if I can create an outgoing loan in the Diva Herbarium, and I'm gonna send it to ASU, and I'm just gonna give it some, some unique name. Let's just say that. Create this loan. I'm gonna add some specimens. I guess I would have to go in here. Just pick a random specimen. Okay, so I've created this loan. Save. And then when I go into Arizona State University and I go into their loan management, then I should see, shouldn't I see one here, Ed?
Right at the bottom of the list. I saw it.
Ah, there we go. Loans to be checked in. So this is a loan that has been issued by someone else, but we haven't necessarily acknowledged that it has been checked in, and we aren't managing it quite yet. So I would click on this and I would say, yes, I did receive this. Let's say I received it today. Save. And then when I go back into my loans, you'll see that that's listed now under my loan management. Any questions about outgoing or incoming loans before I talk briefly about gifts and exchanges? I did see that Jennifer asked if there are duplicate collections at other herbaria for a specimen and you add an annotation to one, do the other herbaria with those duplicates get an alert to update the name to? They do not, but you can look at duplicates with conflicting determinations using the duplicate clustering tools. There's not really a notification system. Right now, it's a bit passive. Mayor,
Hello.
how you
I
doing?
actually have kind of this a number of questions. I don't know if I should ask them all at once, but one is that like the drop down list for the institutions. I noticed like, well, I know you mentioned that sometimes there's duplicated institutions in there, which can kind of cause some issues when you actually pick one that you were always working with, and then you pick another one, and then they're recorded as separate.
Mm-hmm.
An issue. But then I also know, like, is there a way for administrators to be able to edit those, because sometimes there's typos or a collections manager or curator is changed? So is there, or does that all have to go through Symbiota in terms of changing?
You know, that's a good question. Ed, you want to get that one?
Yeah, so if you go in and you create a new institution, or if you go in, let's say I'm from ASU, and I go in and I see the Diva Herbarium listed there. Diva Herbarium, that institution is linked to their collection. And if there's an error there, I won't be able to edit it, because by them going in there and linking it to their institution, they also took charge of the management of that institution. So ideally it's the institution that really needs to make those changes. And the reason for that is, let's say the mailing address. Diva really needs to control their mailing address. They don't want other people coming in and fixing something that maybe is not. They need to manage their own data, basically. But if that institution is orphans, let's say you enter it in and it's not really owned by anyone, like New York Botanical Gardens, since they're not managing it in the system, you should be able to go there and edit that institution. If you can't, though, you could always talk to a system administrator and they could help out with that.
Okay. Maybe I didn't understand like what the orphaned thing meant, but when it gives you that option to be orphaned or linked, like I've often linked it to me, but I don't know if that's the right thing to be doing to RSA.
Yeah, well, if RSA institution's in there, it's linked to you, that means you're the administrator for that. But the other, I'm not talking about linking the institution to a loan. I'm talking about linking it to the collection itself. Yeah. So that's slightly different.
Yeah, well, I don't know.
And if you go into your collection metadata management, so if you go to your menu and if you go to edit metadata, at the bottom of that form or somewhere in there, yeah, and then edit metadata. Yeah, is it down there? That's where an institution is linked to a collection.
I see. Okay. Okay, well.
And if it's linked to a collection, it should be locked down, so only the administrators of that collection can make the edits.
Okay.
But thanks, sometimes it's linked to an institution and people are not available from that institution to make that edits. That's where it's good for you just contact us and say, hey, there's an error here, and then we would look at it and see if it's active, and if it's not, we might make the change, or we might contact the institution and say, hey, what's the correct address, because it's, you know, keeping up all that stuff's up to date is it's a constant thing. So
okay, is it possible for me to ask a couple more questions? One is that like the that issue that when I was creating a loan, that the catalog and the other catalog number duplicated like 3 times, and the only way for me to, when I was creating my species list, it multiplied 3 times within that column. And the only way for me to get it out of there was to take it out, put it into an Excel, and like delete them. So has that been fixed? Because I haven't done a loan since, but you remember
The
Katie?
fix has been added to the code. I don't know if it's been pushed up to CCH2 yet.
Oh, okay. And then one other question I had was that, like, sometimes I think that the loan management aspect should be moved to more of like an administrative task, because I have interns that are, or junior curatorial staff that are not involved in loans. And I just wonder, is there some way to like manage permissions so that they're not accessing that part of the database?
Yeah, that's kind of difficult. I don't know if we need like a middle management area, because a lot of collections have, I think we used to have that long time ago in the administrative thing, and then people have said, hey, I just have my general data enters are the ones that are processing these loans.
Yeah.
So, but it could be, I don't know, maybe what we need to do is adding the paperwork, creating the loans, deleting loans, changing that paperwork is for administrators, but then checking in or linking specimens. Is
I
open
like
to anyone? I don't know.
I like the idea of a middle management, if that's can be an option, but that's just something.
We would have to add that to the
Yeah.
work queue. It's an extra layer of management.
Yeah. Well,
It'd be good to
just
talk to
throwing that in there.
yeah, it'd be good to talk to the overall group and see what they think and see if they're running into similar problems, or if there's a middle ground. Like I said, is it what are the aspects that you don't want them access to? Any part of the loan, or I mean, don't you have some of your data entry people that to either check in loans or?
I have 2 curatorial staff that can help me with that, and I have a curatorial assistant who's at level 2 who does a lot of that, and I do a lot of the loans. But most of the people that are doing, they're working on like digitizing projects, so not really involved in the loans. I've just had like some interns go into some of the administrative parts and delete records, and so that's kind of a concern of mine, like I don't really want people deleting records without my knowledge or approval.
Yeah, we should also talk to the folks that don't want that in the administrative thing and see what their data entry folks are doing. Like, I'm sure their data entry folks are not setting up the loan forms, and
No.
they're probably just doing check-in. So we could review that issue internally and discuss it and see if there's ways where we could lock it down better. So
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mayor. Christy.
Yeah, so a lot of my loans are internal for my outreach department or education department. Would it freak out the system if the loan that I made was to my own institution?
I don't
Good
think
question.
so.
I don't think so.
Yeah, and you could also add an institution as a department of your institution. It would just be one of those orphaned collections. Like, it wouldn't be attached to yours, but it's just like, this is the address because it actually is a different building. And that would just be an institution that doesn't have an associated collection in the Symbiota portal.
Oh, okay, that sounds like a good idea. Thanks.
I would like,
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, before we switch over to changes, if we have time, I'd like to just talk about an improvement that we're gonna do and see if there's comments.
Sure. I think I saw one more question, but then it went away. Deborah, did you have a question?
It was answered. It had to do with being able to change the institutional address.
Oh, perfect. Okay.
It started out with COVID, where we weren't in the buildings. And so I had to have the loans sent to my house. And now I don't have an office in the plant pathology department. And even when I did have one in the plant pathology department, the University of Georgia Museum of Natural History, they they don't know what to do with that mail. And even when it says plant pathology department, sometimes it winds up in botany. Sometimes they deliver to the museum across the campus. And sometimes the entomologists send me an email and say, there's a box that showed up for you.
Yeah, so it definitely is important to be able to change your address when you need.
Yeah.
So you should be able to find that in your collection. And if you can't, that means that maybe your institution wasn't linked to your collection. And so in that case,
I think
you
it is.
go into your metadata and find it. And yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
thanks. Ed, you wanted to
Yeah.
give an update?
I just want to also acknowledge that James Meekley suggested a way where possibly we could create loan, whether things appear in the administrative or editors in a more dynamic way. And that's a good idea. So I think we can explore that option too. Yeah, so there's options out there. We'll explore them. But I just want to say, so there's a common situation, at least within herbaria, where you'll send out a loan to an institution like ASU to Diva Herbarium. And then there's folks up in the Diva Herbarium that are asking for the loan because they want to do taxonomic, they're doing a taxonomic revision. So there's a couple researchers up at NAU that are working on carex. And as part of that process, they're annotating the specimens. And what we want to do is do a permission level that where the ASU can say they do the loan, they link the specimens, and then they say these users have administrative rights over editing those specimens. So that means they could go in there and add their determinations as they're doing the treatments. This is before you get the specimens back to you. One benefit is they're entering in the determinations themselves. That means that's less work for you when you get them back. You don't have to redo it. And then the other benefit on their side is that they're fixing the identifications, so they're able to map the specimens. And as they're doing that fix, so when they do the annotation, they pull up that where they moved it to the other species or whichever, and they could view these taxa on a map and say, well, this one's way over here. Let me check that because that could be, it's really disjunct. And it really helps them do that management. Of course, the institution that created the loan, that owns the specimens, they would choose whether to give those people permission to edit that subset of data.
Very cool, thanks. New horizons in loan management. Okay, one last thing I wanted to talk about with our time is gifts and exchanges. This is pretty simple. There's just a gift and exchange tab here, and then you will have a list of institutions with which you have some sort of exchange agreement or you have given or received gifts. And if you click this plus sign, then you can add a new transaction. So I could either add it to a institution that I have already corresponded with or put a new one. And this is a bit more simple because you're not identifying the specimens that are attached to this gift or exchange. You can if you wanted to put them in the description, but they're not expected to be records that exist in the catalog yet. And so you can just put gifts, gifts for determination, unmounted, mounted, and then it's going to total those up here. And so if you are sending out a shipment or if you received a shipment, you can put that information here and you toggle it by going out or in. And that's what's going to adjust either positively or negatively in the balance that's going to be kept. Or if you want to bring in kind of an old balance, like, oh yeah, a long time ago, we have like this running balance of 303 specimens that we need to send to Bailiu at this point, you could just change that to what's called an adjustment. I don't think I can do that right now, maybe because I haven't put anything here. or it might be because I don't have any interactions with them yet. Back to my exchange management. So I could go to Bayview, I believe. Oh, no, you can only do it inside the incoming here. And then I would change that. Oh, maybe this is just a problem with Sandbox. One moment, please. So if I go into an actually active collection and go to gifts and exchanges and created an exchange or edited an exchange, then you can change the transaction type to adjustment. And that's just going to add or subtract a number of specimens from that running total. So back into the list of gifts and exchanges, you can see that there's an institution and then there's a running balance. So that's how many specimens you owe them if it's in negative, or they owe you if it's in positive. And that's just summed based on all of the transactions that have happened between you and that institution. So again, no specimens particularly linked to those gifts and exchanges. It's just a bunch of totals, but it is a nice way of being able to keep track of how many mounted, unmounted gifts, et cetera, that have been sent to you, and how many transactions have happened between you and this other institution. And the same thing as with the other loans, you can generate an invoice, a mailing label, and an envelope, and you can also add PDFs or Word or Excel or JPEGs into this correspondence attachments. And that's pretty much it when it comes to loan management. Are there any additional questions?
I just want to give a shout out to the loan management tools were originally built by Ben Brandt when he worked at University of Arizona. So thanks for them for originally creating tools, and then they've been modified by various folks over the years, including the Neon Project too. And then James Mackley has also added, improved them too. So thanks to everyone involved, and it's a group effort.
Yeah, thanks, Ed. It's a group effort, and that's the beauty of an open source software, is that many people can contribute. John asks, how do you document a gift from an individual, not an institution? Ed, I don't know if you have other advice, but I would say just add that person as an institution in that list, and they're not going to be linked to one of the collections that exist in the Symbiota portal. It'll just be like, the research laboratory of, Jose, and then you send them the specimens, and they just have an address linked to them. Other questions? All right, well, if there are no other loan management questions, I'm going to end the recording here.